Everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. So our guest today is Pete Mohr from Simplifying Entrepreneurship. Pete's a nice fellow from Ontario, Canada. We had a great conversation. We think a lot alike about how to help entrepreneurs. That's our goal. He works exclusively with the CEOs, the entrepreneurs, to get the freedom back out of their business. He's got some basic frameworks that he works with that he is able to improvise with to help you meet you where you are, to help you to start working on it instead of in it and get you that freedom. So go grab a cigar, grab a cocktail, strap in for another fun episode of Sales and Cigars. So Pete, I appreciate you taking some time to be on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Walter. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to our conversation here today.
You are the second Canadian this week to be on that I've recorded to be on the old podcast. So
well, that's awesome. I hopefully we're doing it justice for you and your listeners.
Well, you guys are always a little nicer than us here in the States.
So they say.
Yeah, well, I have friends that live up in St. Catherine and outside of Toronto, and they're, they always joke about that. They have very stereotypes, but I also know some Americans when they go to Europe, they just pretend they're Canadians.
Yeah, I've actually witnessed that where they literally will sew Canadian flags on their backpacks and stuff.
And they say process instead of process. And,
all of them. Yeah,
and they have the money with the kids ice skating and the old lady with the crown.
There you go. Yeah. Well, not anymore. It's the king.
True.
It's the king now as of
but
last
you haven't
week.
Switched all the dollars or anything yet, right? You haven't.
Not yet. No.
Paper
But
hasn't switched.
I can only imagine it's to come soon.
Well, just as long as they don't put Mr. Trudeau's picture on that would be a travesty.
Yeah.
Let's not go to politics.
Yeah, no, exactly. We could spend the hour just talking that way too, but it's probably in your listeners' best interest that we talk business.
Yeah, so let's do that. So I always make the joke that when we were kids, I don't know about you, but I didn't anticipate doing what I'm doing. I had no idea what I was going to do actually. So let's have share with the audience how you got to be doing what you're doing and what that journey looked like.
I came up with it honestly. My dad wasn't an entrepreneur himself, but he literally ran a fairly large organization for another gentleman. The gentleman owned several different businesses, and my dad ran one of them. So he was essentially, running it for the owner. And it was a large construction company. My mom was a stay-at-home mom who was a teacher. And during her time bringing us up, my sister and I, she always was, entrepreneurial in nature. She was making crafts and selling them to craft stores and doing all sorts of different things and bazaars and all this kind of stuff. And she was, more of that sort of startup-y type personality. My dad was sort of running the bigger business. And so I grew up in it. My relatives, a lot of my relatives are entrepreneurs. A lot of them are farmers that running their own businesses. Some were retailers. So all sorts of things. It was just sort of around me. And I came into it, started off young, doing the landscaping and lawn cutting and all that kind of stuff, shoveling snow, just like you hear people. Well, I was kind of one of them. And I ended up taking business school and went through that, bought my first franchise when I was 23. And that's in 1994 as I look back, and almost 30 years old, that business. It still runs today. I sold it maybe about 13 years ago, but still operating and doing well. And, I've had a few other businesses along the way. That was a bathroom renovation company. We had a cleaning franchise that we bought. It had 30 clients. We built it to 300 and sold it. I've been a realtor, helping people buy and sell businesses as a business broker through some time, which is how I found one of the businesses that we currently own, which are shoe stores. So I bought a shoe store, and we still own 2 of them today. We've added another one. We added a 3rd one, and we've closed it. But along the way, it's been a variety of different businesses. And I like to, I think most of my career I've had more than one business going at a time. And it's just something I've always kind of liked to do. So currently, coaching I probably spend about 4 days a week coaching clients and other business owners to help them with the freedom that they want to live as business owners. And then I spend about a day a week or so with the shoe stores that we own as well.
How did the shoe stores fare during the COVID business?
Well, there was some issues. In Canada, where we are in Ontario, we were closed for about 22 weeks through all of that. And so an 8-week block, and then we're back open, another 8-week block, and we're back open, and a 6-week block. So a lot of different opens and close, and, you have to hire and rehire and all this sort of stuff. So a lot of intricacies, a lot of issues along the way. Supply chain management was a big problem, as it was for almost every business out there. But ultimately, we survived, and we're thriving, and we're doing well. We've been open, for better part of a year and a half now without any closures. I don't see anything happening down the road, and the supply chain's happening. Freight from overseas is a lot less than it was a year and a half ago. So a lot of these things are coming back to, let's call them, some sort of normalcy and a little bit more plannable. Because one of the big things that we had to deal with through all this was the absolute uncertainty of whether we were going to be open, who we were going to be able to serve, and were we going to be able to have a product. And all of those things were very unknown and uncertain. And, part of dealing with small business is that we have to be willing and capable of change. And so there was a lot of change during those times. And thankfully, from my sort of persona, I'm a change agent, and I'm good with change. A lot of people aren't, and they struggled through that time. A lot of retailers really had some struggle through that time because they just didn't know how to change, or didn't know what they should do, or didn't have sort of foresight in some of the ideas. And some of them, unfortunately, didn't make it,
Yeah. Well, you have let's say nobody, but most people don't like change. They don't. They struggle with the concept, but everybody changes every day. They change their clothes, they change their just what they eat. So, but there was an element of fear that was there. I mean, go past the fear of like somebody's going to die, right? I mean, we got past that, but the fear of like, is the container truck going to be floating around? Because your stuff can come into Vancouver. Right? Otherwise, it comes through our country and then got to go through the border.
Yep. Sometimes from Montreal, that side. I mean, it can come from either side, like New York and California type thing, or Seattle, or Florida. But from that side, it can come from either side, or it can come up from the States. And a lot of it does. I mean, Canada continues to be the United States' #1 trade partner. So, I mean, there's a lot of trade done between our borders every day. And so it depends, because the product that we bring in is all branded, and it's like Merrell's and Keen's and New Balance and Saucony and, a variety of different brands that people know, love, and trust. And from those perspectives, they come from different ports. Some of them have Canadian suppliers. Some of them are dealt through a U.S. distribution that looks after North American sort of allocations and what have you. And all of those things are intricacies that had issues along the way, because even when we look at all the different countries that are involved in let's even say manufacturing, because if we let's just take a zipper for a boot. Well, there's only a few zipper factories in the world.
Yeah.
And when they were closed, it created enormous backlogs, but then they couldn't get shipping to happen in the regular sort of just-in-time way that we've been used to as a world, not only in footwear, but for automobiles, for anything, right?
Everything.
All of those things got sort of blocked and barricaded and, all sorts of different things, where if you don't have the zipper to complete the boot doesn't get done, and it can't be shipped on time. Well, in a seasonal industry like ours, if we get our boots in April instead of in August, that's a problem, right? Like, we're not going to sell any boots in April, but we will in August for the fall season. So because we're seasonal, it caused a lot of different problems along the way. And, we had to scrimp and scrape and grab whatever we could, all those different things. But that's part of being a business owner, right? Being a business owner is being able to sort of understand what's in front of you and be able to put the frameworks around it in order to make the best of what you have so that you can carry on and do what you need to do for your customers.
That's sort of the essence of an entrepreneur, is to be able to deal with whatever the world throws at them that particular day or week, and customers too. They throw curveballs too.
Darn right.
I was at a store the other day where this lady, I was talking to the owner, and this lady walked in, and I was engaged in conversation. This lady walked in and says, "I need a price and I need a schedule." And this is incredibly rude and loud. And the lady stood up and, "Hi, I'm the owner. Nice to meet you. What's your name?" She goes, "I don't care who you are. I just want a price list and a schedule." And, I chuckled, right? Because it's just like, that's just not how you talk to people. Yeah. And the owner was like, "I don't think that'll be necessary.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you fit into our little studio here. So, I wish you well. Have a nice afternoon." And the lady was like, went out in a huff, but like, that was like, to me, that's the right thing to do. It's some people might call it brave, but to me, like, who wants a customer like that? It's going to be wreak havoc on your staff. It's hard enough to keep people these days.
Yeah. Walter, I couldn't agree more. I've got this little framework that I use with a lot of my clients. It's called the 5 Ps. And the 5 Ps really is, in a nutshell, understand what your promise is to your clients, right? And then align your product, your process, and your people to that so that you can have the right amount of profit. And when we look at that people portion, which you just talked about, I break down people into 3 different categories. 1, your ideal client; 1, your ideal teammate; and 1, your ideal outsource supplier. Like in my case, for the shoe stores, might be the brands that we align with, right?
Sure.
Or my reps, or whatever the case is. But when we look at aligning for the client base, if that client isn't the right fit, they're going to cause you, your team, and everything else to crumble for no reason and no profit. So why would we want that client?
You're going to lose reputation, aggravation. You're going to put your employees through hell that they don't need to go through. I 100% agree. And in getting that clarity on that, so that's a great framework to work with for somebody to kind of understand. And we can get into a little bit about how you're helping entrepreneurs kind of think differently. Is that fair, to kind of think differently about what they're doing?
Yeah.
But so how do you help them understand who that ideal client profile is, or that avatar, that dot, depending upon vernacular?
Yeah. I think what happens is most of the business owners that I work with have, they've been already at it for a few years, and they're 3, 5, 10 years in, or whatever the case is. They've been working 50, 60, 70 hours a week to get where they are. They want a little bit more freedom, and they want some more time, and they're kind of looking back saying, I got into business because I thought I'd have a better life, and if all I'm doing is making all these decisions and doing all this stuff all the time, how much better is my life than if I would work in the corporate environment?
Exactly.
So basically, it's like reeling this back, taking an overview and how we're laying this out on the accountability charts of their business, and finding out what areas of the business they truly love. As a former business broker and somebody that helped people buy and sell businesses, it was interesting because a lot of people wanted to sell their business because they didn't like it anymore. Not because it wasn't a good business, not because it didn't generate a good profit. Sometimes that was the reason, but a lot of times it was because they were just tired and fed up with it. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore. Right?
It felt like a job instead of a company or business owner, right? Because some people get attracted to the idea, like they like being say that they're the entrepreneur or the business owner. But there's a lot. You talked about change. You talked about understanding, who your customer is. If you don't start thinking about that early, you pay the price, every day thereafter. So one of the things that you do is help people unwind that that sort of tangled up mess,
Right.
and to get back to where they had that desire and that passion and commitment.
Walter, I don't know if this podcast has a video component or not, but
It does.
Yeah. So for those of you who are watching, you can see I've already pulled my hair out. Walter, you obviously did better than I did in this one because you got a nice head of hair. But from this perspective, I kind of look at this and it's like, you know what? Another sort of one of the one-liner type things that I use regularly is decisions. I'm having a hard time spitting it out, but decisions should be made at the lowest possible level of the organization, right? Mm-hmm. And if we think of that again, decisions should be made at the lowest possible level of the organization. So what brings frustration to most business owners is the fact that they'll say to themselves, well, why does that person keep coming to me with this? They should know what to do. Usually it's because you haven't actually aligned and assigned accountability in a proper way to allow them to do it without your involvement.
You haven't given them the authority at the level of function. You haven't aligned your vision with how they can live that vision in their role.
Exactly.
It's a nuance, but it's a critical component. I mean, I see it all the time with sales departments.
Yeah.
And, salespeople not understanding who they're supposed to be talking to, how to speak to them, right? Mm-hmm. What's the right points to be able to, what questions they should be asking. And that's really the owner's responsibility. From a sales perspective, in my belief, it's their responsibility to say, here's what we do, here's how we do it, here's why we do it, here's the people we do it with, here's the people we do it with, and where we can make money. And you get to operate your little business as a salesperson inside of my business, as long as we stay in these parameters. But that's a tough thing to unwind.
It is. And I mean, that's one of the things that we are working on continuously. And it's interesting you mentioned that because one of my calls earlier today was with a group of insurance agents, right? So I work with a team of insurance agents, and we were having that conversation around what is the promise and how do you relay this and how do you communicate it? And how do you live it? And how do you take your client from the problem that they have through your process to a better life? Because ultimately, the only time that somebody's willing to put their dollars down on the table is when you can show them the better life. So what is that? For anybody who's listening here, whether you're selling insurance or whether you're selling shoes or whether you're selling cars, it doesn't matter. You have to envision and encaption what the better life looks like, understand their problem, and see where your subset of taking them through that pulls them to the better life. And that's the communication around that. It's very crucial when we're talking about the sales side of it, right, Walter?
And the marketing side, those have to be aligned too.
For sure.
Right? But what comes out of the salesperson's mouth can totally screw up the marketing, can totally screw up the brand, right? And it happens all the time because that entrepreneur thinks the salesperson knows what they're supposed to say. And have they ever been really successful doing this? Have they ever hit their quota 6 months in a row? Have they ever hit it 3 months in a row? Yeah. So we have evidence that they're missing something. So let's go back and revisit. So you have frameworks, you have, am I wrong in saying positioning it as sort of like a university that you can help put somebody through?
Yeah, so, I am a Business Made Simple coach with Donald Miller, and the whole sort of, if you've ever read the book Story Brand or Business Made Simple or the new one that he has out called How to Grow a Small Business, I coach to all of those frameworks, and we have a variety of different things around there. And then I have a bunch that I spend more time coaching to my frameworks, really is what it boils down to. And we use bits and pieces and modules of the Business Made Simple framework as we need it. But, I'm not sort of tied to any given one thing. When I start working with a customer, it's really understanding what their needs are and then finding out what the right tool for them is. I'm not going to overlay something that isn't right. It just, from my perspective, we want to make sure that we understand the problem in its essence, and then find the right piece and use the right what I call the CPA, the communication, the process, and the accountability structure to take them through. Just like you want to take your client through. Well, I'm doing the same thing, right? Taking my client through from whatever issues they have to have the better life and have a more successful business so they can achieve the goals, using frameworks of thinking about their thinking in their business and communicating that to everybody so that everybody's in the know of what the goals of the business are, what the structure of the business should be, and how do we get to where we want to be through the process.
I mean, I love what your approach, because this is where I struggle with some of my colleagues. They have a square hole, right? And sometimes people fit in that perfectly.
Yeah.
And sometimes they try to put that round peg into that square hole, and it doesn't quite fit without smashing the hell out of it. Yeah. And I think we have to have the frameworks, and we have to have the ability to navigate within a structure. But if we're not able to, as a coach or a guide or a sage or whatever, however we position ourselves, if we don't have that ability to, well, you guys need to do it just a little bit different here, and let's focus on this piece, and let's focus on this language here, and then follow these other steps through here. I think that's our responsibility to go to where they are and help them where they need help. And that's not always it's not always easy. And those folks that like, well, I've been doing it this way for a long time.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I understand, but why am I here?
Yeah, right.
Right? And they're like, well, because we want to do it better. Like, oh, so maybe we should just kind of try a little something different, right? We don't have to go out in left field, but we can try a little something different. Yeah. And it's trying to get those little wins for them is the fun part in my mind. But I actually say to, I'm curious your take on this. I'll say to like a CEO, if I'm going to work with a sales team, and they want me to help them with some process and some messaging, and create accountability, right?
Sure.
So that's wildly a problem.
It is.
So we get all excited. I mean, they get all excited. We're like, we're ready to go. We're all, and it's the 11th hour, and I say, hey, can we talk about why this isn't going to work? And I poke the balloon and let all the air out. And they're like, what do you mean? Why won't this work? And I'm like, yeah, should we talk about that? And well, I guess. You. They're like, what? I'm like, you're going to be the reason this doesn't work. And let me explain. About 45 days in, maybe 60, somebody in the team is going to come to you and say, this guy's really crazy. He wants me to do this thing that's different than what we've always done. He wants to hold me accountable to what I said I was going to do. I don't think it's fair. So I pretend I'm that guy. What do you say? And often they look at me like I'm the boss. I think they're going to do what I tell them to do. Really? You're going to play that card, right? And so we walk through it, and inevitably, 45 days in, I get a phone call. Hey, you remember you told me that at the beginning? Like, yeah. He goes, the guy called. The guy came in my office today. I said, let me guess, it was Steve. I'm like, yeah, how'd you know? Like, not my first rodeo. So, but if we don't set them up for that, is that something you experience? Like, we got to help them see what you probably do it in a nicer, more Canadian way than me.
No, I mean, I think being blunt about certain things is important. And I think, when you're a coach, I'm a coach, Walter, when people work with coaches that don't just sort of lay things out in a given way that's sort of matter of fact, I think that's a problem. And, I think you want to work, if you're listening to this show and you're looking for a coach, you want to work with somebody who's matter of fact and is going to lay it out. And sometimes you're not going to agree. And that's okay. You still are the business owner. You still can make the choice. But it's up to your coach to give you some alternate views on things so that at least it gets your thinking in a way that lets you acknowledge that there is a different way sometimes. And whether you choose to act upon that way is up to you as the business owner. But ultimately, I think part of the job that Walter does with his coaching clients and that I do with mine is to give them these different philosophies and these different ways of looking at things so that you can get your thinking around what you need to do in order to make better decisions that are going to further your business and further your life as an entrepreneur. I mean, you have books behind you, Walter. I've got tons of books behind me. I'm a voracious reader. I'm listening to podcasts all the time. I'm trying to absorb as much information as I can from almost any source that I can so that I can impart anything that I can have and have a conversation around all these different ideas, not only with the ideas that I've come up with, but ideas that other people have come up with too, because my goal to my client is to help them through their problem. And I don't care whose idea it was.
Right.
I'm going to acknowledge them and I'm going to say, hey, Dean Jackson talks about marketing like this, and Dan talks about something here, or Phil talks about this, or Sue talks about that. And I'm going to acknowledge the fact that maybe it wasn't my idea, but ultimately I've got my ideas too, and I'll bring some of those in and what have you. But I want to take that client through from their problem to their better life. And for me, that's my goal as a coach. And if we flip that back onto our listener here, as a CEO of your business, as an owner in your business, that should be your goal when you're aligning and assigning accountability to your team, is to help coach them through with whatever methodology you have, with the promise of your business in mind and in sight, of how you need to make this happen with full clarity, so that you're helping them through in the understanding of why it is that you're asking them to do what it is you're asking them to do on the accountability side of your business.
Well, I 100% agree. And I often will, to me, it's like when I took lessons to play tennis, or I took lessons for golf.
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially with golf, sometimes Brian, my coach, would be like, have to tell me the same thing 7 times.
Yeah.
Right. And he had to have the toolbox to be able to get an idiot to be able to like, oh, that's what you meant. Why didn't you just say that? Right. It's like, I've been saying it for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So the recognizing that like we get some ideas from other places, as long as we give them the attribution, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But like, start with the why. Simon Sinek
Yep.
talked about that, right? So, why is this important? Well, our brand represents this. Remember our core purpose, right? And our values are these things. Well, as long as you operate within those things and you believe in those, and you're looking out for the best interests of our customers, because that's our third value,
Yep.
you're probably going to be okay. And if you make a mistake, that's okay.
That's
right?
a coachable moment, right?
As long as that person, when I have people and I hire them, I'm a bit of a New Yorker, so I'm the worst kind of American brashness. But like, you're going to screw up.
Yeah.
It's not a question. I expect it, and that's okay. But when I come to you and say, hey, this went sideways,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you why you made the decision to do that, and I'm looking for the opportunity to say, well, I screwed up. I didn't teach you that, or I didn't do it well enough, or our system broke down, right? So if you give me the why behind it, then I can help. But if you give me the shoulder shrug, like, I don't know, I just did it, I don't care. I can't work with that. I can't help that. And if I can't work with that and help you, then I probably don't need you long term. And again, hard for some people to hear, but that's kind of how I would help at the beginning part of it. Like, we want you to be successful. We fully know you're going to make mistakes, and we're going to have to help you through it. That's cool.
Yeah.
But and I think part of that, and I learned the lesson the hard way myself, is I didn't tell them that they had the ability to make those decisions in that moment, right? The customer's on the phone, the customer's in the place. Bring them back. Show them what you're doing. Show them like why you did it that way, and what the thing really looks like, and what the color might change. And they once they feel empowered, wow,
it changes things. And your job as the leader is really to communicate with clarity what that promise is so that they can make those decisions without you being involved, right? So that if the process isn't exactly perfect and it's not right down to this 10-step procedure and there's actually 11 that's not communicated there, that they take that up to the promise and they're like, well, our promise is this. And if I make my decision based on the promise of what we're telling our customers and how we're giving them a better life, then I should be okay.
Hey, thanks for being part of the Sales and Cigar community. I wanted to share that I wrote a book, The 7 Critical Mistakes CEOs Make with Their Sales Organization. The CEOs who've read it tell me I cut to the chase quickly, get to the point, explain exactly what they're experiencing, why they're experiencing it, and how to fix it. So if you want a free copy, go check out the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the interview. That's exactly it. And I think, your framework helps the business owners see that they haven't done that and that they need to do it. Maybe they've done it over here, but they haven't done it over there, right? And finance has got their own thing. Manufacturing has the tolerances that they have to be within.
Yep.
Sales and marketing is like, that's just a
Yeah.
black bag of magic. We don't really know what they're doing, but there's processes there too. There's accountability.
sure.
And if you're going to hold people accountable, you got to tell them why, and you got to tell them, what they use to make those decisions.
For sure.
Along the way. So,
It's the most crucial part of leadership is providing clarity for your team.
I 100% agree. So, you said a bunch of stuff that is super smart. If somebody, how would somebody know they're a good fit for Pete, and what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah. So I think really, if you've been at it for a while, and like I said earlier in the conversation, maybe you're doing okay financially now, but you're kind of taking one thing we said was if you're almost ready to sell your business, then you know what, maybe we should have a chat, because maybe after our chat and after aligning and assigning some stuff, you'll actually be working in your business that you love and you may not want to sell it. Alternately, your business is going to actually provide you with a better exit if you have these things taken care of anyway. So you probably owe it to yourself to take care of a lot of this process management, a lot of this thinking before you put your business up for sale, because people don't want to buy a business that's reliant upon the business owner to make all the decisions. That's buying yourself a job, not buying yourself a business. Right?
All you can really sell at that point is goodwill and a list.
Yeah, and some pieces of equipment and some inventory, right? So ultimately, are you looking to get the multiples? Then we need to set, and usually people know this because it's like, well, I am working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. I do make most of the decisions. And if that's you, then we should probably have a chat for a variety of different reasons, whether you're looking to sell in the next 3 or 5 years, or whether you want to turn your business, what I call, into a turnkey business and move from operator of your business to owner of your business, so you can have it as an investment as part of your portfolio and work in it the way you want to work in it, not the way you feel you have to.
Yeah, in this country we call that freedom. To be able
It's a nice thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want that for my clients, and that's why I do what I do, because I love having these conversations. This is my freedom. I get pumped when I'm talking to somebody about this stuff. It's what I truly love to do. So I want to work in my loved zone. So you were saying about being, picky and choosy about clients. I don't take clients that I don't think I can help, and I don't take I don't need to do this. So it's something that I want to do and love to do. And if it's not the right fit, then, we shake hands and hopefully we can find you somebody else that's going to be a right fit, from that perspective. Right. And so that's basically the kind of client that I'm working with, somebody who's kind of successful, but usually at sort of a glass ceiling somewhere that they're trying to break through. And it usually revolves around some of the freedoms they want. They want to spend more time. They want to get away. They want to finally drop the phone and let somebody else take care of the sales call, whatever the case is. Working with business owners in particular, I really don't work a whole lot with sort of the managerial chains within businesses. I do a little bit of sales work as well, like I mentioned earlier in the call, but usually it's working predominantly with the business owners.
All right, that's awesome. So we'll have your website and your LinkedIn profile
Awesome.
in the show notes for people to reach out to Pete.
Yeah, that's great. And I guess one thing that I'm doing right now on my podcast over at the Business Owner Breakthrough is the 10 laws of moving from operator to owner. And if you'd like to take part in that, there's a PDF download on those 10 laws, and it's just at Simplifying Entrepreneurship, which is the name of my business. So simplifyingentrepreneurship.com/laws, and you can download the 10 laws of moving from operator to owner in your business, which is a lot of the stuff we've been talking about today.
So awesome. So I'll have that in there as a little download that the audience can go grab. There's some good ideas in there to start thinking about things, right? Because if they start thinking about it, they might have questions. They can call. They can speak to you, but you're at least giving them some value, to get them thinking, and that's where it all starts, is when they start thinking about what they're thinking about. And
That's it. I appreciate it, Walter. Thanks so much for having me today.
awesome. So last question for you, Pete.
Yeah.
Past or present, any relationship with cigars?
Past, not so much present. And I gotta say, I've never been a big. So I love the smell of cigars. I know it's polarizing.
It is.
Yeah, and for me, I love the smell of it. I'm just not a smoker. So, but I love, when I walk into a place, some people say, "Oh, put that down. I hate the smell." But for me, I love the smell of it. But I just don't personally smoke. And so, from that perspective, I'm going to go and play some music with one of my buddies tonight, who is a cigar smoker and has long been, and he's always been at me to join the club. But maybe someday down the road, I will.
All right, awesome. I mean, it is a polarizing thing, and I've had people tell me that they really don't enjoy them, but they like being around people because of the smell. But there's a community, because for me, if wherever I am, and if it's a decent sized town, or even if it's not, there's often a cigar shop in the town, and you want to figure out what the town's about. Those guys are gonna not spare any untruths. They're gonna give you the straight story. But you immediately have something in common with those people in a cigar shop.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're smoking a cigar, and that's a cool part. But it isn't for everybody. So I appreciate the candor. So we have all the info in the show notes. Reach out to Pete if you're bumping up your head against that glass ceiling. He'll help you out.
Thanks so much, Walter. Make it a great day.
Appreciate it. Hey, thank you for being part of the Sales and Cigars community. I want to take a quick second to share that I'm doing a free sales hiring challenge this month. I'm going to give you everything you need to hire sales superstars and avoid the sales duds. Check out the link in the show notes to be able to sign up for free.